Right, the Peach Bowl, the second college football playoff semifinal, also taking place on New Year's Eve, Saturday, December 31st, Ohio State and Georgia. We've got at Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta. We've got Georgia 6.5-point favorites, 61.5, 62 being the total in this game. This one is a game where Georgia, to me, the more I look at them, the more that secondary is – there's holes there. I'm not afraid to say it. There's holes there in that Georgia secondary, and we're starting to see it come to fruition here down the stretch of the regular season. LSU with Nussmeier was when he came into the game in the SEC championship game, he was able to move the football through the air a little bit against Georgia. So keep that in mind. They've had some games where they've given up some passing plays, some passing yardage. To concern me just a little bit here when you're playing, an Ohio State team that, while they are off that miserable loss to Michigan, 45-23, again, where it was pretty good in the first half from Ohio State, and then Michigan had another one of those outstanding TCU, or, one of those outstanding Michigan, I should say, second halves where they just poured it on. And I think it leaves Ohio State in a spot off that Michigan debacle where their pride's been wounded a bit, and it leaves them even more amped to make amends. They get a second life. They're still in the playoff. They do have to face this real tough Georgia team. We know how good they are both sides of the ball. But that secondary for Georgia, what I've seen from them at times concerns me, especially when we know that's something that Ohio State can capitalize on. If a secondary's given up a few big plays in the passing game, we know C.J. Stroud and Ohio State is capable, no doubt about it, of taking advantage of it. I know there's people making a huge deal out of the absence of Jackson Smith and Jigba for this game. He's decided not to play, and he was banged up anyway. He was really dealing with a ton of injuries all season long and never got on track. I don't think it's that big of a deal because, he just wasn't healthy much of the season. And it's not like Ohio State doesn't have depth, at wide receiver. They've got plenty of it. So, they've got Marvin Harrison Jr., they've got Emeka Egbuka, Julian Fleming. I mean, they're fine at wide receiver. They'll be fine here in this game. This one, to me, I think is a competitive football game. And certainly now the numbers come down to the point where I was initially looking at the Buckeyes, and certainly 6.5 now, a little tougher, but certainly lean to the Buckeyes because I think that passing game is going to be capable of working a little bit here against that Georgia secondary. And on the flip side, I also like the total here, Conor. I think it goes over. Because I think when you look at it, Georgia, the few times they've had some little chink in the armor defensively, it's been through the air, giving up plays to the opponent, which is the strength of Ohio State. But on the other side, look, we saw what Michigan did offensively against Ohio State, running the football down their throat, making big plays. Georgia's very capable of doing that with their running back tandem of McIntosh and DeJuan Edwards. They've got, obviously, an outstanding tight end in Brock Bowers, Dylan Bell and Adonai Mitchell, very capable receivers. And I'll tell you what, Stetson Bennett doesn't always give the credit he deserves. They're an explosive offense, flat out. They are a very explosive offense. We don't always talk about that with Georgia because how good the defense has been. Kirby Smart's a defensive-minded head coach, but that is an outstanding offense they have. They will move the football. They should have not many issues moving the football here against Ohio State's defense. So I think this ends up going up and over the total here of the 62.5s that we see out there right now for this game. Conor Mack, what do you think here? Second semifinal, Ohio State, Georgia in the Peach Bowl.
Ohio State's got to feel great that they're here after losing to Michigan in this spot. So maybe that helps them. But, I got LSU scored there. I don't know what to make of it because they were up, 28-0, 35-0, 35-7.
Yeah, do you lose focus a bit? Maybe if you're Georgia with a big lead, yeah.
Yeah, I remember those defense where there was, a long time ago against Oregon. We thought it was a pretty good offense. Tennessee, which kind of scored a late touchdown. I mean, they didn't do anything in that football game. So I think if the A game's here, Georgia covers this number. If you can get this under a touchdown, there's still 6.5s out there. They bring their focus like they do these big games. I think they cover this number here. But if they don't, because Georgia will score. Ohio State, I've talked about all year. They don't have a great defense. Last year they didn't. They got into the shootout we mentioned with Utah in the Rose Bowl. Georgia should move it on them pretty easy. I just think there'll be a few mistakes, and this Georgia defense will come to play. best team in the country. I'd lay, if you can get under a touchdown, I'd lay it.
All right, we'll lay it under the touchdown. And that's the thing with my I'm not really rushing to bet Ohio State here. It's just my initial lean, just based on the matchup, was, you know what? I think they could make some things in the passing game happen against Georgia's secondary, because if there's one little weaker link of the defense, it's not like they're a horrible secondary, Georgia, but there's no doubt they're better against the run than they are against the pass. No question about that. And that's why Ohio State, I think, can make some plays. It's probably also why, personally, Connor, I'm probably going to gravitate more toward betting the total over than the side, because I think Georgia, to your point, is going to make plays. And Jim Knowles, for as much as I complimented him and the hire of him as DC for Ohio State, it didn't really do much for them against one of the best offenses they played all year when they played Michigan, which did anything they wanted in that game.